She found something. The perfect stepmother. Ut was hiding everything. Every conversation recorded, every lie documented, every crime exposed. She walked into that room with the truth in her hand. When she pressed play, the perfect life shattered. She screamed the inheritance was hers, until the daughter showed the USB drive that destroyed her scheme. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead in the conference room of Morrison and Klein law firm. 8 pairs of eyes fixed on the polished mahogany table where a single USB drive sat like a loaded gun. "You have nothing," Victoria Sterling's voice cracked through the silence, her perfectly manicured nails digging into the leather armrest. "That inheritance is mine. Your father wanted me to have everything. You're just a bitter little girl who can't accept that he moved on from your pathetic mother's memory." Sarah Mitchell, 28, sat perfectly still across from her stepmother. Her hands trembled slightly, but her jaw was set. Around the table, 2 lawyers, her father's business partner Marcus Chen, her aunt Linda, and Victoria's son from her first marriage, Brandon Sterling, all watching like spectators at her execution. "Is that your final statement?" Sarah's voice was quiet, almost gentle. Victoria laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. "What are you going to do? Show us your daddy's old birthday cards? Pathetic sentiments about loving you? That doesn't change the legal documents I have. This company, the estate, the investments, it's all legally mine." The lawyer beside Victoria, Richard Hammond, leaned forward with a predatory smile. "Miss Mitchell, my client has been more than patient. Your father's final wishes are clear. Perhaps it's time to accept—" Sarah stood slowly, every movement deliberate. She picked up the USB drive, held it between her fingers like a diamond, and placed it in the center of the table with a soft click. "Before anyone leaves this room," Sarah said, her voice now steel wrapped in silk, "I need you all to hear something. My father spent his last 6 months making sure the truth would survive him." She plugged the drive into the laptop. When she pressed play, nobody in that room was prepared for what they heard. 6 months earlier, the life before Sarah Mitchell had always been her father's daughter. Robert Mitchell, self-made real estate mogul, philanthropist, terrible cook, worst dancer, had raised her alone after her mother Emily died of cancer when Sarah was 12. For 16 years it had been them against the world. She inherited his stubborn chin, his terrible taste in 80s rock music, and his inability to let injustice slide. At 28, she ran the community outreach program for Mitchell Properties, turning vacant buildings into youth centers and affordable housing. Her father was so proud, he kept every newspaper clipping about her work in his desk drawer. Then came Victoria. She entered their lives like a luxury perfume, expensive, impossible to ignore, and slightly suffocating. 42, platinum blonde, former executive assistant with a master's degree in reading the room. She met Robert at a charity gala 3 years ago. 6 months later, they were married in the Bahamas. Sarah wasn't invited. Victoria claimed it was intimate. Victoria brought Brandon, her 25-year-old son from her first marriage. He had his mother's calculating eyes and his father's gambling debts. Sarah tried to build bridges. She failed. The 2 households existed in cold détente. Sunday dinners became business negotiations. Christmas felt like corporate retreats. Robert tried to bridge the gap, but even he couldn't make water mix with oil. Then, 3 months ago, everything changed. Robert Mitchell died of a sudden heart attack in his study. He was 62. The doctors said it was stress, genetics, bad luck. But Sarah noticed things. Her father's last weeks were erratic, confused, paranoid. He kept mentioning insurance and the truth. He hugged her goodbye like he knew something she didn't. The funeral was a circus. Victoria wore Versace black and wept theatrically. She just didn't know that the stepmother was already preparing her coup and needed to destroy Sarah quickly. The reading. The law offices of Morrison and Klein smelled like old money and older secrets. Sarah sat across from Victoria for the first time since the funeral. The air was thick enough to cut. Thomas Morrison, her father's lawyer for 20 years, looked uncomfortable. He kept adjusting his glasses, a tell Sarah recognized from childhood negotiations over curfews and car privileges. "Thank you all for coming," Morrison began, his voice formal. "Robert Mitchell's estate is complex. He made several amendments in his final months." Victoria's hand shot to her chest in practiced grief. He was so unwell. The poor darling barely knew what day it was. Sarah's fingers curled into fists under the table. Morrison cleared his throat. The primary estate, including the family home, the controlling shares in Mitchell Properties and the investment portfolio, goes to— Sarah held her breath. Victoria Sterling Mitchell, as per the prenuptial agreement modifications signed 6 weeks before Mr. Mitchell's death. The room tilted. Sarah gripped the armrest. However, Morrison continued quickly, there are specific provisions. Sarah Mitchell is to receive her mother's jewelry, held in trust, and a sealed envelope with instructions that she's to open alone. Additionally, Robert established a separate trust that remains sealed pending— Pending what? Victoria's voice was sharp now, the grief mask slipping. Pending investigation into certain financial irregularities Mr. Mitchell flagged before his death. Silence. Victoria recovered with practiced grace. My husband was paranoid in his final days. Medication does terrible things to the mind. I'm sure any irregularities were simple accounting errors. Richard? She glanced at her lawyer, Richard Hammond. Expensive suit, shark smile, reputation for winning ugly. My client is confident that any review will show complete propriety, Hammond said smoothly. Mrs. Sterling Mitchell suggests we expedite probate so the grieving can end and business can resume. Sarah watched this performance with growing clarity. This was rehearsed, prepared. Victoria wasn't surprised by any of this. She was directing it. Morrison handed Sarah a manila envelope. Your father was quite specific that you received this today. Their eyes met. Morrison looked away first, and Sarah understood. He couldn't help her directly, but he wasn't on Victoria's side either. Outside in the parking garage, Sarah tore open the envelope with shaking hands. Inside, a handwritten note on her father's letterhead. Bunny, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry for what's coming. I should have been stronger, smarter, faster, but I wasn't. Pride and age made me stupid. Victoria is not who she pretends to be. I discovered this too late. She's been systematically positioning herself to take everything, not just from me, but from you, from your mother's memory, from everything we built. I don't have proof she can't destroy or explain away, but I documented everything I could. There are 3 things you need to find. 1. The external hard drive in my study, hidden where only you would look. Remember your 16th birthday. 2. My offshore account records. Marcus has the key. 3. The final insurance policy. It's with someone who knows the real Victoria. Don't trust the lawyers she's touched. Don't trust Brandon. Don't even trust the partners at the company until you have everything. You're stronger than you know, Bunny. Your mother raised a fighter. I just gave her ammunition. All my love, Dad. P.S. The code is always the code. Sarah's hands trembled. Bunny was her mother's nickname for her. Victoria didn't know it existed. And the code meant her mother's birthday. 04/1/18. She looked up at the concrete ceiling of the parking garage, blinking back tears. Okay, Dad, she whispered. Let's finish what you started. The anomaly. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the reading. Victoria's performance had been too perfect. The lawyer, too prepared. Even Brandon had seemed coached on when to look sad. At 2 a.m. she gave up on sleep and opened her laptop. Her father had given her access to the company's basic financial dashboards years ago. Nothing sensitive, just enough to understand the business. She logged in, expecting nothing unusual. What she found made her blood run cold. In the last 8 months, there had been 17 major cash transfers out of company operating accounts, labeled consulting fees and strategic restructuring costs, each one approved by her father's digital signature. But her father hated consultants, called them parasites in business casual, and he'd been teaching Sarah to distrust restructuring since she was 15. It's what people call theft when they want it to sound smart. She dug deeper. The consulting firm receiving the money was called Apex Strategic Solutions. No website, no LinkedIn presence. Registered in the Cayman Islands 3 days before the first payment. Sarah's journalist friend had taught her a trick. Reverse search the company address. It matched a UPS store in Fort Lauderdale, a shell company, taking millions from her father's business while he was alive. She grabbed her phone and called Marcus Chen, her father's business partner. He answered on the 3rd ring, groggy. Sarah, it's 2 in the morning. Marcus, I need you to tell me the truth. Did my dad approve payments to something called Apex Strategic? Long silence. Too long. Marcus, we need to talk in person, not over phones. Tomorrow, my house, 6 a.m. Come alone. He hung up. Sarah sat in the darkness of her apartment, the laptop screen casting blue light across her face. Victoria wasn't just stealing an inheritance. She'd been robbing her father blind while he was dying. Return to the scene. The Mitchell estate sat on 3 acres in Westchester County, a sprawling colonial that had been in her mother's family for generations. Sarah hadn't been back since the funeral. Victoria had changed the locks for security, but Sarah still had her key to the garden entrance, the one her mother had installed for late-night returns from college. It was 4 a.m. when Sarah parked 3 blocks away and approached through the woods she'd played in as a child. The house was dark except for a single light in the master bedroom, Victoria's room now. Sarah's childhood bedroom was untouched, which somehow made it worse, like a museum display of a life interrupted. But she wasn't here for sentiment. Her father's study was on the ground floor overlooking the garden. Sarah used the key she'd made when she was 17. For emergencies, she'd told herself. The door opened silently. Her father had always kept the hinges oiled. The room smelled like him. Old books, expensive whiskey, and the cedar wood oil he used on his desk. Sarah's throat tightened, but she pushed through. "Remember your 16th birthday," the note had said. Her 16th birthday had been complicated. She'd just gotten her driver's license and promptly crashed her mother's old BMW into a neighbor's mailbox. Instead of punishing her, her father had taken her to his study and shown her the secret compartment built into his desk, a family heirloom from his grandfather. "Someday," he'd said, "you'll need to hide something that matters, and now you know where." Sarah ran her fingers along the desk's underside until she found the catch. The hidden drawer slid open with a soft click. Inside, an external hard drive in a leather case and another envelope. She pocketed both and turned to leave. The hallway light turned on. Sarah froze, footsteps coming down the stairs. She slipped behind the heavy curtain just as Brandon Sterling entered the study, phone pressed to his ear. "I'm telling you, she's going to be a problem," Brandon was saying. "Mum thinks she's just some naive daddy's girl, but she's been asking questions." Pause. "No, the lawyer won't talk. We paid him too much. But Marcus Chen is different. He actually gave a shit about Robert." Sarah's pulse hammered in her ears. "Look, we just need to get through probate. Once Mom has control of the company accounts, we can bury anything Robert left behind. Sarah gets her dead mum's jewelry, and we all move on." Another pause. Brandon laughed, cruel and sharp. "If she keeps pushing, I don't know. Accidents happen. She's so devastated about Daddy's death, who knows what she might do." Sarah's blood turned to ice. Brandon hung up and left the study, whistling. Sarah waited 10 minutes before moving. Her legs shook as she climbed back out the garden entrance and ran through the woods to her car. Inside, she locked the doors and sat in darkness, breathing hard. They weren't just stealing. They were willing to kill to keep it. Marcus's confession. Marcus Chen's house was a modest Tudor in Larchmont. He answered the door before Sarah could knock, already dressed in running clothes despite the early hour. "Come in, quickly." His home office was lined with books on architecture and business ethics. Ironic, given what Sarah suspected. Marcus poured them both coffee with shaking hands. "I should have come to you sooner," he began. "But Robert made me promise to wait. He said you needed to find the pattern yourself or you wouldn't believe it." "Believe what?" Marcus handed her a folder. 6 months before he died, your father discovered that Victoria had been systematically moving assets out of his personal accounts. Small amounts at first, $5,000 here, $10,000 there. Easy to miss, but it added up to almost $400,000 over 2 years. Sarah flipped through bank statements, highlighted transfers, pattern analyses. When he confronted her, Marcus continued, she cried, apologized, said she was preparing a surprise investment for him, showed him doctored paperwork. Robert was already sick by then. The doctors said it was heart disease, but looking back, he trailed off meaningfully. "You think she poisoned him? I think she isolated him, stressed him, possibly medicated him in ways that accelerated his decline. I can't prove it, but Robert believed it. In his last weeks, he was terrified, said he'd made a terrible mistake marrying her, said she was going to take everything and erase your mother's legacy. Then why did he leave her everything in the will?" Marcus smiled grimly. "Did he?" Sarah leaned forward. "The will Morrison read is real," Marcus explained, "but it's not final. Robert filed something called a contingent codicil with a different law firm, one Victoria doesn't know about. It stipulates that if evidence of fraud, coercion, or criminal activity is presented within 6 months of his death, the entire estate reverts to you. But it means you have 4 months left to prove Victoria is a fraud. And Robert spent his last months collecting that proof. Marcus pulled out a small key. This is to a safety deposit box at First National, box 447. Robert said you'd know what to do with what's inside. Sarah took the key. Why didn't you just give this to the police? Because everything in that box was obtained, let's say, unconventionally. Private investigators, recorded conversations without consent, financial documents Robert technically shouldn't have had access to. None of it is admissible in court. It's just a roadmap. You need to find admissible versions of this evidence, and you need to do it quietly. Victoria has lawyers who'll bury anything you can't prove ironclad. Sarah stood. Then I'd better get started. Sarah, Marcus grabbed her arm. Be careful. Brandon made some calls last night from the house. We have someone monitoring the property. They're talking about making you go away. I know, Sarah said quietly. I was there. The safety deposit box, First National Bank, opened at 9 a.m. Sarah was there at 8:55. Box 447 was in the vault's deepest section. The banker left her alone in a small private room. Inside the box, 3 items. A leather journal in her father's handwriting, hundreds of pages documenting every suspicious behavior, every financial irregularity, every lie Victoria told. Dates, times, witnesses. A burner phone with saved call logs and text messages. Sarah scrolled through communication between Victoria and Richard Hammond, the lawyer, dating back 3 years. Long before her father got sick. Messages about securing the asset, managing Robert's health decline, ensuring clean succession. A USB drive with a label in her father's handwriting, the insurance policy. Sarah plugged the USB into her laptop with trembling hands. The drive was encrypted. Password protected. She typed 0418, her mother's birthday. Incorrect password. Sarah stared at the screen. The code is always the code, her father had written. What other code mattered? Then it hit her. Not her mother's birthday. Their anniversary. Her parents' wedding anniversary. 0615199998. The drive unlocked. Inside, 67 video and audio files. Dates spanning 3 years. Sarah clicked on the first one. Her father's study. Camera hidden somewhere high. Victoria and Brandon, sitting across from Robert, who looked tired, pale, older than Sarah remembered. Victoria's voice, honey sweet. Robert, darling, you really need to sign this power of attorney. Just in case something happens to you. I need to be able to take care of things. Sarah watched her father's hand tremble as he signed. She clicked on another file. Audio only. Victoria's voice, no sweetness now. The old fool actually believes I love him. God, Brandon, it's exhausting. But he's worth $60 million, so I'll endure a few more months of playing the devoted wife. Brandon's laugh. Just make sure the life insurance is maxed out before he croaks. Sarah sat back, feeling sick. Her father had recorded everything. Every manipulation, every lie, every scheme. But when she tried to copy the files to her laptop, an error message appeared. Files corrupted. Codec missing. Professional restoration required. Of course, her father had encrypted them so heavily that they needed specialized software to even play correctly. Smart. It kept them safe. But it also meant Sarah couldn't just hand them to the police. She needed an expert, and she knew just who to call. The digital forensics expert, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, ran a boutique digital forensics firm in Manhattan that catered to corporate espionage cases and high-net-worth divorces. Sarah had met her 2 years ago at a Women in Business conference. Yuki had given a talk on digital evidence that made half the audience sweat nervously. Yuki's office was in a renovated warehouse in Tribeca, all exposed brick and high-end servers, humming behind soundproof glass. Sarah Mitchell, Yuki smiled, pushing up her glasses. I heard about your father. I'm sorry. I need your help recovering some files, Sarah said without preamble. She placed the USB drive on Yuki's desk. My father encrypted them heavily. They're damaged or deliberately obscured. I need them restored and verified for legal proceedings. Yuki picked up the drive like it was a live grenade. Encrypted files from a dead man that might be used in court. This sounds expensive and potentially problematic. My stepmother is stealing everything my father built. These files prove it. But I need them in a format that holds up legally. Chain of custody, verification, the works. Yuki plugged the drive into an isolated workstation. Her expression shifted from casual to intense. Jesus, Sarah, your father used military-grade encryption layered with proprietary codecs. This is serious spy-level stuff. Can you crack it? Crack it. Honey, I can do better than that. I can restore it, verify it, create forensically sound copies with unbreakable chain of custody documentation, and provide expert witness testimony if needed. She looked up. But it'll take a week and it'll cost you $25,000. Sarah swallowed hard. She had $31,000 in her savings account, money she'd been saving for a non-profit expansion. Do it. The pattern emerges. While Yuki worked on the files, Sarah dove into the journal her father had left. His handwriting grew shakier as the dates progressed, but the details were meticulous. March 15th. Victoria insisted I fire Sandra, my assistant of 15 years. Said Sandra was too protective of me. I refused. 3 days later, Sandra's daughter mysteriously got accepted to Stanford, with a full scholarship we later learned was fake. Sandra quit to deal with the crisis. Victoria recommended her replacement, a woman named Jennifer, who reports everything to V. April 2nd, found sleeping pills crushed in my evening whiskey. Victoria claimed the prescription was for her anxiety, but I never gave her permission to put them in my drink. Started pouring drinks out, pretending to take them. Noticed Victoria becoming frustrated with my continued alertness. May 10th. Marcus warned me about unusual transfers from our operating account, $2.3 million to restructuring consultants I never approved. When I confronted Victoria, she showed me a document with my signature. I don't remember signing it, but my hands shake now. I don't trust my own memory. June 1st. Hired a private investigator to look into Victoria's past. Real name, Victoria Castellano. 3 previous marriages, all to wealthy older men. First husband died of a heart attack at 58. Second divorced her after discovering asset transfers. She settled for $8 million. Third died of accidental medication overdose. She walks away rich every time. June 18th. The PI found Brandon's real history. Criminal record sealed as a juvenile, but connections to financial fraud cases in Florida. He's been Victoria's partner in this from the beginning. They've run this con before. July 4th. I know I don't have much time. The doctors say my heart is failing, but I think Victoria is helping it along. I'm documenting everything, but I'm terrified she'll find this journal. If you're reading this, Bunny, it means I failed to stop her in time. Please finish what I started. Please don't let her win. The final entry was dated 2 days before his death. I'm sorry I wasn't stronger. I'm sorry I brought her into our lives. I was lonely and vain, and she saw me coming a mile away. But I've left you the weapons you need. The USB drive has everything. You just need to use it right. Trust Marcus. Trust your instincts. And remember, Victoria's weakness is her arrogance. She thinks she's smarter than everyone. Use that. Sarah closed the journal, tears streaming down her face. The conspiracy deepens. 3 days after leaving the USB with Yuki, Sarah received a call from an unknown number. Miss Mitchell? This is Detective Rachel Ortiz, Financial Crimes Division, NYPD. I'd like to discuss some irregularities regarding your father's estate. Sarah's heart leapt. Had someone already filed a complaint? She met Detective Ortiz at a coffee shop in Chelsea. Ortiz was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, with the kind of quiet intensity that suggested she'd seen everything twice. I'm going to be honest with you, Ortiz began. We've had Victoria Sterling Mitchell on our radar for 2 years. She came up in a separate investigation involving financial exploitation of elderly clients at a medical facility in Connecticut. But she's smart, really smart. Everything she does has plausible deniability. We've never been able to make anything stick. Why are you telling me this? Because your father filed a complaint with our department 3 weeks before he died, said his wife was systematically stealing from him and potentially poisoning him. We opened a preliminary investigation, but then he died and... Ortiz spread her hands. Heart attack. Natural causes according to the autopsy. The ME found nothing suspicious. Case went cold. But you don't think it was natural? I think Victoria Sterling Mitchell is very good at killing people slowly enough that it looks natural. And I think if you have evidence that proves otherwise, I want to see it. Sarah hesitated. Could she trust this? As if reading her mind, Ortiz slid a folder across the table. This is everything we have on her previous husbands. Read it. Then decide if you want to work with us or go this alone. Sarah opened the folder. Husband number 1, Thomas Sterling, died at 58 of a heart attack, leaving $12 million. Victoria contested a prenup, settled for $4 million. Thomas's children claimed Victoria had isolated their father in his final months, but couldn't prove it. Husband number 2, David Castellano, divorced after 18 months when he discovered $3 million missing from joint accounts. Victoria claimed it was investment losses and produced documents to prove it. Settled to avoid publicity. Husband Thartha 3, Gregory Lancaster, died of an accidental overdose of prescribed medications at 61. Victoria inherited $15 million. His sister filed a wrongful death suit, but was bankrupted by legal fees and dropped it. The pattern was unmistakable. "She's done this before," Sarah whispered. "3 times that we know of, and she's gotten better each time. Your father was going to be her masterpiece, the biggest take yet. But he figured her out. The question is, did he leave you enough to finish what he started?" Sarah looked Detective Ortiz in the eye. "He did, but I need 1 more week to get everything in order." "Don't wait too long," Ortiz warned. "Victoria's moving fast. She filed papers yesterday to dissolve your father's contingent codicil. Claims he was mentally incompetent when he filed it. If a judge agrees, you lose everything." Sarah's blood ran cold. "How much time do I have?" "The hearing is in 12 days, and Victoria's lawyer is very good at making little girls look unstable in court." Sarah stood. "Then I'd better make sure I'm ready." Brandon's mistake. That night, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stop digging or you'll end up like your father. This is your only warning." She screenshot it immediately and forwarded it to Ortiz. 10 minutes later, Ortiz called back. "Can you trace where that came from?" "Already did. Burner phone, but it pinged off a tower near your father's estate." "Someone's watching you, Sarah." "Good," Sarah said quietly. "Let them watch. I want them to see what's coming." The restoration. 7 days after dropping off the USB drive, Yuki called. "It's done, and Sarah, this is explosive." Sarah rushed to Yuki's office. The forensic expert looked like she hadn't slept. Empty energy drink cans littered her desk, and her eyes were bloodshot behind her glasses. "Your father was methodical," Yuki began, pulling up files on her main monitor. "He recorded conversations over 3 years, 67 audio files, 15 video files, dozens of documents. But he didn't just record. He created a forensic trail that proves authenticity. The screen filled with folders, each meticulously labeled. Financial theft, documents 1 to 23, recorded confessions, audio 1 to 34, video evidence, files 1 to 15, medical manipulation, documents 24 to 31, prior cons, research files." "Walk me through it," Sarah said. Yuki clicked on the first video file. Video file 001. Date, March 10th, 3 years ago. Hidden camera footage. Her father's study. Victoria and Richard Hammond, the lawyer, sitting close together going through documents. Victoria's voice. "So if Robert signs this revised prenup, everything transfers to me upon his death, including the business?" Hammond. "Everything. The key is getting him to sign while he still trusts you. Once he's sick, it's harder. Courts scrutinize deathbed changes. We need him healthy and confident when he puts his name on this." Victoria, laughing. "Oh, he's confident all right. Thinks he found his soulmate after years of mourning his precious Emily." She mimicked Sarah's father's voice mockingly. "He's so pathetically grateful that I chose him." Sarah's hands clenched into fists. Yuki clicked to another file. Audio file 012, date June 15th, 2 years ago. Victoria and Brandon. Conversation recorded from a device hidden in the living room. Brandon. "How much longer? You said this would take a year, Max." Victoria. "These things take time. Robert's smarter than the others. I need to move carefully, but I've started preparing the ground. His medications can be adjusted. The stress of running a company at his age, the grief over his dead wife. It's not unreasonable that his heart would give out." Brandon. "You said that about Lancaster and he lasted 3 years. Victoria, coldly. "Lancaster was careless. Drank too much, made it easy. Robert is careful with his health, but everyone has weaknesses. I've been researching drug interactions, beta blockers and certain supplements, completely untraceable. Looks like natural heart failure." Sarah felt bile rise in her throat. Yuki fast-forwarded through dozens more files, each one more damning than the last. Audio file 029. Date, January 20th, 8 months ago. Victoria on the phone with someone named Dimitri. Victoria. "The shell companies are set up." "Good. Start moving money from the operating accounts. Small amounts, under $200,000 per transfer. Robert's getting suspicious, but his business partner Marcus is loyal to a fault. As long as the company stays profitable, nobody asks questions. Dimitri, heavy accent. And the daughter? She is problem? Victoria. Sarah? She's a bleeding heart do-gooder running charity programs. She doesn't understand finance, and she certainly doesn't suspect her beloved father married a black widow. By the time she figures it out, if she ever does, everything will be locked up legally. Video file 008. Date, September 5th, 5 months ago. Hidden camera in the master bedroom. Victoria preparing medication, crushing pills with practiced efficiency, mixing them into a glass of water. Her father's voice, off camera, weak. Victoria, is that my heart medication? Victoria, turning with a smile. Of course, darling. Doctor's orders. Here, let me help you sit up. The camera caught her adding 2 extra pills from an unmarked bottle while his back was turned. Sarah couldn't watch anymore. She turned away, shaking. There's more, Yuki said quietly. Your father documented every theft. He hired a forensic accountant who traced $8.7 million in fraudulent transfers over 2 years, all to shell companies controlled by Victoria and Brandon. She pulled up a spreadsheet. Every transaction highlighted, sourced, verified. He also found evidence of Victoria drugging him. Hair sample analysis. He was being given high doses of medication that would stress his heart. Combined with the beta blockers he was prescribed, it would essentially be slow-motion poison. Why didn't he go to the police? He tried, Yuki said. There's a file here, police report from 3 weeks before he died. But without his medical records showing the drug interactions, without proof of intent, it was just speculation. Victoria had been careful. She had explanations for everything. The prenup changes were our mutual decision. The shell companies were investment opportunities Robert approved. The medications were prescribed by his doctors. She thought of everything. Almost everything. She didn't count on your father being paranoid enough to document it all, and she definitely didn't count on him encrypting it in a way that proves authenticity. Yuki pulled up another screen. This is where it gets interesting. Your father used a blockchain timestamp system for these files. Every recording was uploaded in real time to a distributed server with cryptographic verification. That means I can prove these files weren't edited, weren't manipulated, and were created on the exact dates and times they claim, so they're admissible in court. With my testimony as a forensic expert, absolutely. But Sarah, Yuki's expression turned serious. Once you present this, there's no going back. Victoria will fight with everything she has. She'll claim your father was paranoid and delusional, that the recordings were taken without consent, that you're a bitter stepdaughter making false accusations. It's going to get ugly. Sarah straightened her shoulders. I don't care. My father spent his last months collecting this evidence. I'm not letting him down. Yuki smiled grimly. Good. Because I made 3 complete copies. 1 for you, 1 for your lawyer, and 1 for the police. Chain of custody documented every step. If Victoria tries to destroy one, we have backups. She handed Sarah a secure case containing the drives. One more thing, Yuki added. File 067, the last one your father recorded. It was 2 days before he died. I think you need to hear it. Audio file 067, date, October 23rd, 2 days before death. Her father's voice, so weak it was barely recognizable. Sarah, if you're hearing this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I wasn't stronger. I'm sorry I didn't see Victoria for what she was until it was too late. I was lonely and she was beautiful and attentive, and I was a foolish old man who thought he deserved a second chance at happiness. But I want you to know something. Every moment of my life you made me proud. Your mother and I, as we created someone remarkable, someone with integrity and courage and a fierce sense of justice. Victoria thinks she's won. She thinks I'm just a sick old man who'll die quietly and leave her everything. She doesn't understand that I raised a fighter. This USB drive contains everything you need to destroy her. Use it wisely. Trust Marcus and trust yourself. And remember, the greatest revenge isn't anger, it's justice served cold and absolute. I love you, Bunny. Always have, always will. Even death doesn't change that. Now go finish what I started. Sarah sat in Yuki's office, tears streaming silently down her face. Okay, Dad, she whispered. Let's end this. Setting the stage. Sarah made the call from a burner phone, voice steady despite her racing heart. Richard, this is Sarah Mitchell. I need to speak with Victoria. I'm ready to negotiate. A pause. She could almost hear the predatory smile forming. Miss Mitchell, how wise of you to see reason. Mrs. Sterling Mitchell has been hoping you'd come to your senses. I want to meet. Tomorrow night. At the estate. My father's study. 7 p.m. Just family, your legal team, and Marcus Chen as witness. That's quite specific. Those are my terms. I'll bring my proposal for settling the estate quietly. No court battles, no public scandals. But I need to see Victoria face to face. Another pause. I'll call you back in 1 hour. Sarah hung up and immediately called Detective Ortiz. They'll agree, Sarah said. Victoria can't resist the chance to see me surrender in person. It feeds her ego. You're sure about this? Ortiz asked. Once you play that USB, there's no taking it back. She'll lawyer up immediately. I'm sure, but I need you to be ready. The moment I present the evidence, I need you to move. Arrest warrant, asset freeze, everything. We'll be positioned outside the estate. But Sarah, be careful. Cornered predators are dangerous. Sarah smiled without humor. So are daughters who've had enough. The call back. 45 minutes later, Richard Hammond called. Mrs. Sterling Mitchell agrees to your terms. Tomorrow, 7 p.m., the estate study. She appreciates your maturity in handling this privately. Of course, Sarah said, loading her voice with defeat. I want this to be over. My father wouldn't want us fighting. Very reasonable. We'll see you tomorrow. Sarah hung up and called Marcus Chen. It's happening tomorrow night. Are you ready? I've been ready for months, Marcus said grimly. Your father trusted me to have your back. I won't let him down. Next, she called her Aunt Linda, her mother's sister, a retired prosecutor with a spine of steel. Linda, I need you at the estate tomorrow night, 7 p.m., and I need you to bear witness to something that's going to change everything. Linda had been skeptical of Victoria from day one. What are you planning, honey? Justice. Can you be there? I'll bring my camera and my lawyer instincts. If that woman has hurt you, she hurt Dad worse. But not anymore. Preparation. Sarah spent the next day preparing like she was going to war. She met with Yuki to ensure the files were on 3 separate USB drives, backups in case Victoria tried to destroy the evidence. Each drive was marked with blockchain verification codes. She met with Ortiz to coordinate timing. The moment I say the phrase, my father's final gift, that's your cue. Come in with everything. She met with Marcus to review the financial documents. They needed to be ready to prove the shell companies, the fraudulent transfers, every penny Victoria had stolen, and she went to her father's grave. The cemetery was quiet at sunset. Sarah knelt by the headstone, simple granite with her parents' names side by side, just as her father had requested. I hope I'm doing this right, Dad, she whispered. I hope Mom would be proud too. I'm scared. Victoria's smart and vicious, and I'm just me. But you believed I could do this. So, I'm going to try. The wind rustled through the trees. For just a moment, Sarah felt a warmth like her father's hand on her shoulder. I love you too, she said softly. Both of you. Watch over me tomorrow. The gathering. The next evening, Sarah arrived at the estate at 6:45 p.m., early enough to settle her nerves, late enough to look reluctant. The house looked different. Victoria had already redecorated, replacing her mother's warm, eclectic style with cold, modern minimalism. Photos of Sarah's mother had been removed. It felt like a museum now, not a home. Victoria was already in the study, wearing a cream Chanel suit that probably cost more than Sarah's car. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a severe chignon. She looked like a CEO preparing to fire someone. Brandon stood behind her, arms crossed, trying to look intimidating. His expensive watch caught the light. Paid for with stolen money, Sarah thought coldly. Richard Hammond sat at the conference table, briefcase open, papers arranged with military precision. Marcus arrived at 6:55, nodding to Sarah. He took a position near the door, strategically placed to block any quick exits. Aunt Linda came in at 6:58, phone in hand. I'm recording this for family records, she announced. Anyone object? Victoria's smile was ice. Of course not. We're all family here. At exactly 7 p.m., Sarah sat down across from Victoria. Thank you for coming, Sarah began, her voice carefully measured. I know the last few weeks have been difficult. Victoria leaned forward, false sympathy oozing from every pore. Oh, sweetheart, losing your father has been hard on all of us, but we need to move forward. Your father would want that, would he? A flicker of something crossed Victoria's face, too quick to name. Of course, he loved us both. He wanted his family to be taken care of. Sarah opened her bag slowly, pulling out a folder. I've been thinking about what you said at the will reading, about my father's wishes, about his final months. And? Richard Hammond leaned forward. And I did some research. Sarah placed the folder on the table. About you, Victoria. About your previous marriages. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Victoria's smile never wavered. I don't know what gossip you've been listening to. Thomas Sterling died at 58. David Castellano divorced after you stole $3 million. Gregory Lancaster, accidental overdose. Sarah's voice was steady as a surgeon's knife. 3 wealthy men, 3 fortunes, 1 very convenient pattern. Brandon stepped forward. You need to watch what you're saying. Sit down, Brandon, Marcus said quietly. You'll want to hear this. Victoria's mask was cracking. This is absurd. Grief has made you paranoid, just like it did your father in his final days. Is that what you're going with? Sarah interrupted. That my father was paranoid? That his concerns about you were just the delusions of a sick old man? Well, weren't they? Victoria's voice turned sharp. He was dying, confused, medicated. Medicated by you. Silence. With drugs you added to his evening whiskey. Beta blockers mixed with contraindicated supplements. Enough to stress his heart, accelerate his decline, but subtle enough that no autopsy would catch it. Richard Hammond stood. Miss Mitchell, these are serious accusations without foundation. I strongly suggest— Sit down, Richard, Sarah said coldly. We're just getting started. She reached into her bag and pulled out the USB drive, placed it in the center of the table like a loaded gun. Victoria stared at it. Really stared. And for the first time, Sarah saw fear flicker across her stepmother's face. What is that? Victoria's voice was barely steady. My father's final gift, Sarah said clearly. The reveal begins. Sarah plugged the USB into her laptop, turning the screen so everyone could see. 3 years ago, my father started suspecting something was wrong. You were too attentive, Victoria. Too eager to control his medications, his schedule, his finances. So he did what any smart businessman does when he smells a con. He started documenting everything. She clicked play on the first audio file. Victoria's voice crystal clear. The old fool actually believes I love him. God, Brandon, it's exhausting. But he's worth $60 million, so I'll endure a few more months of playing the devoted wife. Brandon's laugh. Just make sure the life insurance is maxed out before he croaks. The color drained from Victoria's face. That's taken out of context, she stammered. Sarah clicked the next file. Video this time. Victoria and Richard Hammond in the study, discussing the fraudulent prenup modifications. Hammond jumped up. This recording is illegal, inadmissible. Your father couldn't consent to— Actually, Aunt Linda spoke up, her prosecutor voice cutting through the panic. In New York, only one party needs to consent to recording. And since this was Robert's home, his study and his recording equipment, it's perfectly legal. I checked. Sarah kept playing files, one after another. The evidence mounted like an avalanche. Victoria discussing how to isolate Robert from his friends. Brandon researching untraceable poisons. Financial transfers to shell companies. Victoria crushing pills into her father's medication. Conversations about making it look natural. Plans to handle Sarah if she became a problem. By the 10th file, Victoria had stopped protesting. She sat frozen, watching her entire scheme collapse in real time. You recorded everything? Her voice was hollow. Everything, Sarah confirmed. 67 audio files, 15 videos, forensically verified with blockchain timestamps that prove authenticity, plus complete financial records tracing $8.7 million you stole, plus evidence of systematic drugging that contributed to his death. She looked Victoria dead in the eye. My father spent his last 3 months building the case against you. He was sick, he was dying, but he made sure you wouldn't win. Because he knew exactly what you were. Victoria lunged across the table, grabbing for the laptop. You little bitch, give me that! Marcus caught her arm. Don't make this worse. Brandon made a move towards Sarah, but Aunt Linda stepped between them, phone raised. I'm recording everything. Touch her and you'll add assault to your charges. Richard Hammond was frantically packing his briefcase. Victoria, don't say another word, not one word. This meeting is over. The meeting is over when I say it's over, Sarah said coldly. She pulled out her phone and sent a single text. Now. Within 30 seconds, the study doors opened. Detective Rachel Ortiz walked in, flanked by 4 officers. Victoria Sterling Mitchell, you're under arrest for financial fraud, elder abuse, and suspicion of murder. Brandon Sterling, you're under arrest as an accessory. You both have the right to remain silent. The arrest Victoria's facade shattered completely. This is insane. You can't arrest me. I'm the victim here. This girl is making up lies because she's jealous. Ma'am, please put your hands behind your back, Officer Chen said firmly. Do you know who I am? Do you know what my lawyers will do to you?" Victoria's voice climbed to a shriek as the handcuffs clicked around her wrists. "This is harassment. False arrest. I'll sue every one of you." Brandon tried to run. He made it 3 steps before 2 officers tackled him in the hallway. His expensive watch cracked against the marble floor. "Get off me! Mom, call Dimitri. Call the lawyers. Call everyone." But Victoria wasn't listening. She was staring at Sarah with pure hatred. "You think you've won?" Victoria hissed as the officers guided her toward the door. "You're nobody. A little non-profit manager playing detective. I have the best lawyers money can buy. I'll be out in 24 hours, and when I am, I'll destroy you. I'll take everything and you'll end up homeless and—" "Victoria Sterling Mitchell," Detective Ortiz interrupted calmly, "I strongly advise you to stop talking. But please continue. You're doing our job for us." Richard Hammond was already on his phone, backing away from the scene like it was radioactive. "Victoria, I'm calling Anderson and Rhodes. Don't say anything. Not one word. I'll meet you at the station." "You knew," Sarah said quietly, stopping him. "Every step of this fraud, you facilitated it. Drafted the fake documents, coached her on what to say, helped structure the shell companies." Hammond's face went pale. "I'm an attorney. I followed my client's instructions. You conspired to defraud and possibly murder my father." Sarah handed Detective Ortiz a folder. "Every email between you and Victoria for the past 3 years. My father's PI pulled them from your firm's server. Apparently you're not as careful with digital security as you think." Hammond's phone slipped from his hand. "Richard Hammond," Ortiz said almost cheerfully, "you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and being an accessory to elder abuse. You have the right to remain silent, which I strongly suggest you use." As the officers led all 3 away, Victoria turned back one last time. "Your father was a weak, stupid old man who died alone because nobody really loved him," she spat. "Not even you, or you would have protected him." "My father died surrounded by the evidence that would destroy you," Sarah said quietly. "He died knowing I would finish what he started. And he died loved by me, by his real friends, by everyone whose life he touched. You'll die in prison, and nobody will remember your name except as a cautionary tale." Victoria's scream of rage echoed through the mansion as the police cars pulled away. The media storm. By morning, the story had exploded across every news outlet in New York. Black widow arrested. Wealthy widow accused of systematically murdering husband for fortune. Stepdaughter's revenge. USB drive contains evidence of years-long con. $60 million scheme unraveled. Victim recorded everything before death. Sarah's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters camped outside her apartment. News vans lined the street outside the Mitchell estate. Marcus handled most of the press inquiries with a prepared statement. "The Mitchell family is cooperating fully with law enforcement. We ask for privacy during this difficult time." But the story was too juicy to contain. Within 48 hours, investigative journalists had dug up Victoria's entire history. Her real name was Victoria Russo. She'd grown up in Newark, daughter of a convicted con artist. She'd had 6 previous identities, not just 3 husbands. There were whispered connections to organized crime, money laundering, possible involvement in other deaths that had gone uninvestigated. Thomas Sterling's children came forward with their own evidence, things they'd never been able to prove. Gregory Lancaster's sister gave tearful interviews about how she'd tried to warn people, but no one listened. The story went national, then international. Victoria Sterling Mitchell became the face of a new kind of crime, the sophisticated patient predator who killed with kindness and stole with smiles. The bail hearing. 5 days after the arrest, Sarah attended Victoria's bail hearing. The courtroom was packed with media, curious onlookers, and victims of Victoria's previous schemes. Victoria appeared in an orange jumpsuit, her platinum hair unwashed, makeup gone. She looked ordinary now, just another criminal without the designer clothes and practiced charm. Her new lawyer, Hammond, had immediately flipped, agreeing to testify against her in exchange for reduced charges, argued for bail. "Your Honor, Mrs. Sterling Mitchell is a respected member of the community with no prior criminal record. She has substantial ties to New York and poses no flight risk." The prosecutor, Assistant DA Jennifer Wu, stood with barely contained anger. "Your Honor, the defendant is accused of systematically defrauding and possibly murdering multiple wealthy men over 2 decades. She has used at least 6 different identities. She has financial resources hidden in offshore accounts across 3 countries. She has already made threats against the victim's daughter. She is the textbook definition of a flight risk. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, reviewed the evidence summary. Her expression grew darker with each page. Mrs. Sterling Mitchell, the judge said finally, I've been on this bench for 23 years. I've seen murderers, con artists, and every kind of criminal, but the calculated cruelty documented in these files is extraordinary. You spent 3 years systematically poisoning a man who trusted you, while stealing everything he'd built, while planning to destroy his daughter if she interfered. Victoria stared straight ahead, emotionless. Bail is denied. You will remain in custody pending trial. Furthermore, I'm ordering a complete asset freeze on all accounts, properties, and holdings associated with you or your son. Trial is set for February 15th. The gavel came down like thunder. Victoria was led away without looking at anyone. But Brandon, in the row behind her, locked eyes with Sarah. His expression promised murder. Sarah stared back until he looked away. The aftermath begins. That evening, Sarah returned to the estate for the first time since the arrest. Police had cleared it after collecting evidence. Now it was just a house again, empty, echoing, full of ghosts. She walked through rooms Victoria had redecorated, seeing the spaces her mother had once filled with warmth and light. Slowly, Sarah began removing Victoria's changes. The modern art came down. Her mother's photos went back up. The cold minimalism gave way to warmth again. In her father's study, she sat at his desk, the one with the hidden compartment, the one where he'd spent his final months documenting his own murder. Marcus found her there an hour later. "How are you holding up?" he asked gently. "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "I thought I'd feel triumphant, victorious, but I just feel tired and sad. Dad's still gone. Victoria being in jail doesn't bring him back." "No," Marcus agreed, "but justice matters. Your father died knowing the truth would come out. That's not nothing." Sarah picked up a photo from the desk. Her parents on their wedding day, young and hopeful and in love. "Marcus, can I ask you something? Did he suffer at the end?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. He was in pain, physically. The drugs Victoria gave him made him weak and confused. But Sarah, he wasn't afraid. He told me 2 days before he died that he was ready, because he'd done everything he could to protect you. He said, "Victoria thinks she's won, but she doesn't understand. I raised a warrior." Tears spilled down Sarah's cheeks. "I miss him so much." "I know. We all do." Marcus put a hand on her shoulder. "But you made him proud. You did exactly what he needed you to do." The unexpected ally. 3 days later, Sarah received a call from an unknown number. "Miss Mitchell, my name is Catherine Lancaster. I was married to Gregory, Victoria's third husband." Sarah sat up. "Mrs. Lancaster, I'm so sorry for your loss. Call me Catherine, and I'm calling because I want to help. I've been following your case. You did in weeks what I spent years failing to do. You actually proved what that monster is. The evidence was my father's work. I just finished it. Don't diminish what you did. You were brave enough to see it through." Catherine paused. "I have evidence too. Things I couldn't use before because I couldn't prove the pattern. But now with your father's case, I can finally get justice for Gregory. The DA wants to file additional murder charges against Victoria. I need to know. Will you stand with me as we go through this trial?" Sarah thought of her father, of Gregory Lancaster, of Thomas Sterling, of all the victims Victoria had left in her wake. "Yes," she said firmly, "we'll stand together." "Good, because Victoria's lawyers are going to paint us as bitter, vindictive women trying to destroy a grieving widow. They'll say we're lying, that we're jealous, that we're unstable. They'll try to break us." "Let them try," Sarah said. "We have the truth, and that's stronger than any lie they can tell." The trial preparation. The months leading to Victoria's trial were brutal. Sarah had to relive every moment of her father's decline. She gave depositions, met with prosecutors, reviewed evidence until she could recite it in her sleep. The media attention was relentless. Every time she left her apartment, cameras were there. Victoria's defense team was exactly as aggressive as predicted. Led by Martin Rothstein, a celebrity attorney who specialized in impossible cases, they attacked from every angle. They claimed Robert Mitchell had been mentally unstable, paranoid, suffering from undiagnosed dementia. They produced a doctor Victoria had paid, who testified that Robert showed signs of cognitive decline. They argued the recordings were edited, taken out of context, products of a man who'd become irrationally suspicious of his loving wife. They painted Sarah as a bitter, jealous daughter who'd never accepted her father's second marriage and was now seeking revenge through false accusations. The prosecutor, Jennifer Wu, prepared Sarah for what was coming. "They're going to destroy you on that stand," Wu said bluntly during a prep session. "Rothstein will imply you're mentally unwell, that you're manufacturing evidence, that you stood to inherit everything if Victoria was out of the picture. He'll make the jury see you as the villain. But we have proof. Proof they'll say is fake, edited or misinterpreted. Sarah, I believe you. The evidence is overwhelming. But juries can be unpredictable, especially when you put a crying, sympathetic woman in front of them. Victoria's already giving interviews from jail talking about how much she loved Robert, how devastated she is by these cruel lies." Sarah watched one of those interviews. Victoria in prison scrubs, no makeup, looking fragile and wounded. "Robert was the love of my life," Victoria said, tears streaming. "I cared for him through his illness. I held his hand when he died. And now his daughter, who barely visited him in his final months, is trying to profit from his death by destroying my reputation. It's heartbreaking." The comments section was divided. Half the people called her a monster. The other half wondered if maybe, just maybe, Sarah was the real villain. Sarah's breaking point. 2 weeks before trial, Sarah came home to find her apartment vandalized. Nothing was stolen, but everything was destroyed. Her mother's jewelry, the inheritance she'd fought so hard to protect, was scattered across the floor, some pieces broken. Photos were torn. Her laptop was smashed, written on the bathroom mirror in red lipstick, "Drop the charges or next time it's you." Detective Ortiz arrived within minutes. Brandon's still in jail, so it wasn't him directly, but he has friends. "They're trying to scare me. Is it working?" Sarah looked at the destruction around her, thought of her parents, thought of her father spending his last months collecting evidence while being slowly poisoned. "No," she said firmly. "It's making me angrier." But that night, alone in a hotel room with police protection outside, Sarah broke down. She called Aunt Linda, sobbing. "I don't know if I can do this," she admitted. "They're never going to stop. Even if we win, Victoria has people on the outside who'll keep coming after me. Maybe I should just take a settlement, walk away, try to rebuild somewhere else." "Sarah Mitchell," Linda's voice was sharp. "Listen to me. Your mother faced down cancer for 3 years. She fought every day even when she knew she was dying. She didn't do that so you could run away when things got hard. But I'm so tired. Of course you are. You're fighting a battle your father started. But you know what? He chose you for this. Not his business partners, not his lawyers, you. Because he knew you had the strength to see it through. Don't prove him wrong now." Sarah wiped her eyes. "What if we lose? Then we lose knowing we fought for the truth. But Sarah, honey, we're not going to lose. That woman is guilty and the evidence proves it. You just have to be brave enough to stand up and say it." The letter 3 days before trial, Sarah received a letter forwarded by Marcus. No return address, postmarked from a prison in New Jersey. Inside, a single page in Victoria's handwriting. "Sarah, I'm writing this because I respect you enough to be honest, something I rarely am. You won. I underestimated you, which was my mistake. I thought you were just another naive rich girl who'd cry and give up. I didn't expect you to be smart enough, angry enough, or disciplined enough to finish what Robert started. Your father was smarter than the others. Thomas was arrogant. David was lazy. Gregory was trusting. But Robert saw through me eventually. And instead of confronting me directly, he planned. He documented. He built a case he knew would survive him. I almost respected him for it. You should know something. I didn't love your father, but I didn't hate him either. He was a means to an end, a very lucrative end. The poisoning was practical, not personal. I needed him incapacitated enough to sign what I needed, weak enough to die on schedule, but not so obviously murdered that anyone would investigate deeply. It would have worked if he hadn't been paranoid enough to record everything. As for you, I meant what I said about destroying you if you interfered. I still have resources, and Brandon has friends who owe him favors. After the trial, win or lose, there will be consequences. But I'm telling you this not as a threat, but as acknowledgement. You're tougher than I gave you credit for. You're more like me than you want to admit. We both do whatever it takes to protect what's ours. See you in court." Victoria Sarah read the letter twice, then handed it to Detective Ortiz. "She's threatening you again," Ortiz said. "No," Sarah corrected. "She's trying to get in my head, trying to make me doubt myself, make me scared, make me think I'm somehow like her." "And?" Sarah tore the letter in half. "I'm nothing like her. She destroys people for money. I'm fighting to honor my father's memory. That's not the same thing." But late that night, she wondered, Was she fighting for justice or for revenge? Was there even a difference anymore? The final preparation. The day before trial, Sarah visited her parents' grave one last time. She'd brought flowers, her mother's favorite, white roses. She placed them carefully between the headstones. "Mom, Dad, tomorrow it happens. Everything we've worked for, everything Dad documented, it all comes down to 12 strangers deciding whether to believe the truth." The cemetery was quiet except for wind in the trees. "I'm scared," Sarah admitted. "Not of Victoria's lawyers or her threats or what people think of me. I'm scared I'll let you down, that I'll freeze on that stand, or say the wrong thing, or somehow ruin everything Dad worked for." She touched her father's headstone, cold granite under her palm. "But Aunt Linda's right. You chose me for this. You believed I could do it. So I'm going to walk into that courtroom tomorrow, and I'm going to tell the truth, all of it. And whatever happens after that, we'll face together." A bird landed on her mother's headstone, a cardinal, brilliant red against the grey stone. Sarah's mother had always said cardinals were messengers from heaven. "Okay," Sarah whispered. "I understand. I'm ready." The cardinal flew away, and Sarah walked back to her car with shoulders squared and purpose in her step. Tomorrow, truth would face lies, and Sarah Mitchell would make damn sure truth won. Thay's verdict. The trial lasted 6 weeks. It was everything Jennifer Wu had warned and worse. Victoria's lawyer painted her as a devoted wife, martyred by a disturbed stepdaughter. He brought in character witnesses who testified to Victoria's charm, her generosity, her obvious love for Robert. He attacked the recordings as ambiguous, the financial evidence as circumstantial, the medical evidence as inconclusive. He made Sarah cry on the stand when he brought up every time she'd missed a Sunday dinner, every argument she'd had with her father about Victoria, every moment that could be twisted to look like a bitter daughter seeking revenge. But Jennifer Wu was relentless. She played every audio file, showed every video, walked the jury through every fraudulent transfer, every forged document, every dose of poison mixed into an unsuspecting man's drink. She brought Catherine Lancaster to testify about Gregory's death. The same patterns, the same methods, the same outcome. She brought Dr. Yuki Tanaka to explain how the blockchain verification proved the recordings were authentic and unedited. She brought Detective Ortiz to detail Victoria's history of targeting wealthy, older men. And on the final day, she had Sarah read her father's last letter aloud to the jury, the one where he'd apologized for not being stronger, for not seeing Victoria sooner, and thanked Sarah for being brave enough to finish what he started. There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. The jury deliberated for 3 days. When they returned, Victoria stood emotionless as the verdict was read. Count 1, murder in the 2nd degree, guilty. Count 2, financial fraud, guilty. Count 3, elder abuse, guilty. 8 more counts, guilty, guilty, guilty. Victoria Sterling Mitchell was sentenced to 45 years to life in prison. Brandon received 20 years as an accessory. Richard Hammond, who'd turned state's witness, got 5 years in disbarment. As Victoria was led away in handcuffs for the last time, she locked eyes with Sarah. No hatred now, just empty acknowledgement. She'd lost. Rebuilding 6 months after the trial, Sarah stood in the lobby of the newly renovated Mitchell Foundation headquarters. The inheritance had been substantial once Victoria's theft was accounted for and recovered. $47 million, the company, the properties, everything her father had built. Some people told her to sell it all, travel, live the rich heiress life. Sarah had different plans. She'd restructured Mitchell Properties to focus exclusively on affordable housing and community development. Every luxury condo project was cancelled. Every vacant property was converted to youth centres, domestic violence shelters, job training facilities. The Mitchell Foundation now funded programs for elder abuse prevention, financial literacy, and support for victims of manipulation and fraud. Sarah had hired Marcus as CEO. Catherine Lancaster joined the board. Aunt Linda ran the legal oversight division. Together, they were building something that would make her parents proud. The memory box. In Sarah's office, her father's old study, carefully restored to how her mother had originally decorated it, sat a small wooden box on the desk. Inside, the USB drive that had changed everything. Sarah didn't need it anymore. The trials were over, the appeals denied. Victoria would die in prison, but she kept it as a reminder. Not of the pain, or the betrayal, or the months of fear and anger, but of what her father had taught her in his last act, that love means protecting the people you care about, even after you're gone. that the truth is worth fighting for, no matter the cost. That courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what's right, despite it. The visit 1 year after the verdict, Sarah visited Victoria in prison. She didn't owe her this, didn't need closure from the woman who'd killed her father. But she went anyway. Victoria looked older now. Prison had stripped away the last pretense. She sat across from Sarah in the visiting room, hands cuffed to the table, orange jumpsuit hanging loose on her diminished frame. "Why are you here?" Victoria's voice was flat, emotionless. "Because my father would want me to see you as a human being even now," Sarah said quietly. "He believed in redemption, even for people who didn't deserve it." "I don't want redemption, I know, but I need to say something." Sarah leaned forward. "You spent your whole life taking from people, stealing their money, their trust, their lives. You thought that made you powerful." Victoria said nothing. "But my father gave me something you could never steal and never understand. He gave me purpose. He taught me that the measure of a life isn't what you take, it's what you build, what you leave behind, who you help, who you love." Sarah stood. "You'll die in here with nothing but regrets and prison walls. I'll die decades from now, surrounded by the lives I've improved, the people I've helped, the legacy my parents built and I continued. That's the difference between us." "Feel better?" Victoria asked mockingly. "Actually, yes," Sarah smiled, genuine and warm. "Goodbye, Victoria. I hope you find whatever peace you're capable of." She walked out without looking back. The real inheritance. 2 years after the trial, Sarah stood in front of the Mitchell Foundation's new building, a converted warehouse that now housed job training programs, legal aid services, and counseling for abuse victims. Marcus stood beside her, along with Aunt Linda, Catherine Lancaster, Detective Ortiz, and Dr. Yuki Tanaka, all the people who'd helped her finish what her father started. "We're calling this the Robert and Emily Mitchell Center for Justice," Sarah announced, "because my parents taught me that real wealth isn't measured in bank accounts or property holdings. It's measured in lives changed, communities healed, and truth spoken, even when it's hard." She turned to the photo on the lobby wall, her parents on their wedding day, young and hopeful. "My father didn't just leave me money," Sarah said softly. "He left me courage. He left me purpose. He left me the understanding that love means fighting for what's right, protecting the vulnerable, and making sure the truth survives, even when we don't." She placed her hand over her heart. "That's the inheritance I'll carry forever, and that's what I'll pass on to everyone who walks through these doors." The cardinal landed on the building's sign, red and brilliant in the afternoon sun. Sarah smiled. "Thank you, Mum. Thank you, Dad. I finished it, and I'm just getting started."